It's a paradox because when I was seeking, I wasn't fully in my relationships. I wasn't fully involved in that part of life. Because there's something wrong, I got to fix it. So a lot of the seeking was just constantly, there's something wrong with me and I got to fucking fix it.
Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to another episode of The Greatest Comeback, a podcast that explores the transformational power of adversity and how it can be, usually is, the catalyst for our growth, healing, and becoming the greatest versions of ourselves. Now, I've always been drawn to people with courage. Not the David and Goliath type of courage, although that in itself is attractive, but the courage it takes to be ourselves, to show ourselves, to drop the filters and the posturing and let ourselves be seen, irrespective of what others may think. I think authenticity, the courage to be ourselves, is going to be the new oil, more valuable than crypto and AI and all the commodities combined. And when I encounter people like this, who are willing to be seen for who they are, vulnerable and real, I want to be around them. I want to talk to them. I want to learn from them because their stories, their examples help me be more myself, be more courageous. Well, my guest today is one such person, best known as the yoga teacher to the yoga teachers, certainly in this part of the world. Like all of us, he has gone through many incarnations: athlete, surfer, somatic psychotherapist, mind-body coach. And now at 60, and I'm sure he won't mind me mentioning his age. In fact, I think he would prefer that I do. He is reinventing himself in the most courageous and authentic way I know, in front of the eyes of the world, which of course is a euphemism for on social media. Mark Breadner, welcome to The Greatest Comeback.
Thank you. Thank you. I always love a good comeback story. I've always resonated with that and the underdog. I think that's very Aussie as well.
Me too. It resonated so much that I wanted to start a podcast about it. So, mate, thank you for being part of this. I want to get to your story and why I invited you on the podcast and this example of courage that I witnessed in you that inclined me to reach out to you and follow you and learn from you. But before we do that, I want to get a sense as to your background, and we'll skim the tops of the waves. We won't necessarily go into chapter and verse. But I think looking back on some of the highlights of your, dare I say, career, funny word, that word. I always balk at that word. But your experience and your relationship and your journey with yoga, can we talk about that for a second? Where and when did that start?
I was pretty fortunate because my mum was one of the first teachers in Australia, and we lived in Cronulla, and that's an hour south of Sydney. It's a kind of blue collar, it's a surf town. And she was very religious, and yoga and religion really didn't fit together. In some circles, they still don't. But she made it work, and she was teaching yoga downstairs in the rumpus room 2 nights a week. And it was always packed, and it was full of ladies. And I just started when I was 5 because it was something to do. But I just got it. Whatever it was, past life, whatever you want to call it, I just got it at a young age. And it's been my through thread my whole life. I started apprenticing with her when I was 15 at the local hospital, Down syndrome kids, asthmatic kids. I started my own classes at 18, studios, teacher training, mind-body coach, worked in the corporate space, stress management, worked with Olympic athletes, gold medalists, world champions in swimming and surfing. You know, thousands of people in many different ways, but it's always been my life. And I guess I've always had this real deep down yearning for truth, being a truth seeker. And yoga just happened to be my model. And when I say that, I talk about full system yoga in the sense that it was designed to, see beyond the veil, see what's actually going on. And then when you can see that, being able to live a higher possibility. And I like to take all of that kind of higher stuff and model it in very simple, applicable ways that people can then also be better humans themselves.
When was it, do you think, I mean, this interest in, I call it the esoteric, but really all things spiritual, wisdom traditions, where do you think that came from? I mean, you mentioned the words truth seeker. Was there a point in your life, was there a moment when you became aware that this was something that was active within you?
I always felt from an early age that I was an outsider. I was always sitting on the sidelines and observing from the outside. I never got really deep into, organizations or connections, but I could come in and out of groups and I could be very chameleon-like. I mean, I really understood how to read rooms before I learned to read myself very quickly, because just that version of my family dysfunction, and we all have it, but there was a big training, forceful training in doing what you're told, being seen and not heard, don't question authority. And if you do, whooshka. And that's dad and mum, but that's school, that's the church, that's the whole thing. So I decided, okay, I'll be what the world wants me to be, but just quietly, I'm going to do my own thing. So I felt very disconnected and alone. So I spent a lot of time trying to understand that and research it. There was a spiritual bookstore in Sydney, just behind the Queen Elizabeth building. I can't remember the name of it, but I'd be in there reading 5 books at a time, all the time. And, I had this sense that something was wrong and I didn't know what to do. So I just kind of self-medicated with exercise. I was training 5 hours a day. I was binging on the weekend. And in the end, I just burnt out. I was sick for a couple of years. And really that sent me on the path of, okay, I was doing all the advanced asana, but it didn't really change anything. And I was being the athlete and everything looked good from the outside on the surface. But inside, I was screaming and I was rageful. And that was the greatest gift, getting sick, because I kind of burnt the boats, just gave up that lifestyle, went and lived on hippie communes for 5 years, started to go to India, and I started to align with these yoga masters, and they were teaching a very different thing, and they showed up in a very different way. So I spent a lot of time going backwards and forwards there, trying to know what they knew and what were they practicing that I'm not practicing, what are they doing that I'm not doing, because they were, to me, appeared endlessly happy, powerful, loving, and I wanted more of that. How do I get that? That really sent the path, in that direction of, what we might call spiritual or esoteric, but it's just the, the higher vibrational frequencies of real life.
Yeah, yeah. I resonate with so much of what you just said. I used to call it unreconciled angst. As a younger person, before I wouldn't call it an epiphany, but there was a moment when I realized that I wasn't just my body and my mind, and I can't remember when that was. I think psychedelics had a lot to do on my particular journey. That had a lot to do with it.
Good chance of it.
It's got a good chance of it. Might do it. But there was this, and by the way, certainly in terms of my journey, like the knowingness of the fact that I'm not just my mind and my body doesn't necessarily help with managing the suffering. Conceptually I understood it, but as I get older and have walked further down this path, I've realized this is something that I need to practice. This is something that I need to embody and live, because whilst I get the theory, this is a real practice. And I got to tell you, Mark, the number of times I ask that question, particularly people that are quote unquote on the path, where did this start? It's always got to do with childhood, and it's always got to do with some level of suffering that can't be named. I can't put words around it, but I just don't feel great on the inside. And typically most, people mask with all sorts of things, right? It's substances. In your case, it was exercise. You were an athlete for a while, right? You're an Ironman and a surfer. How big of a part did that play in terms of reconciling the angst that you were feeling that you couldn't name?
Well, it just killed the edge. I mean, anytime, we see this thing where in the end, in the whole yoga system, is you want to go to silence, right? And in the silence, like everything then comes up into your face. And we distract ourselves from that there our whole life, whether it be self-medicating through, drugs or alcohol or chocolate cake or getting in arguments. I did it through exercise and I did it by binging on the weekend, but it just bled all the charge out. And so that I didn't really have to face it. And there was the idea that if I could win a race, then finally I'd be good enough. So there's a big driver there. And that if I could master these difficult poses and, wrap my feet around my head, that somehow that would make me feel better. It didn't. And so what do? You just double down and try harder. And that's what I did. I mean, I was hooked on the endorphins of exercise, 100%. I was, the partying, the sex, all of that stuff. It was super fun, but it wasn't helping anything. I still felt that deep sense. And if I got still enough and I slowed down, then it would come up. And there's no way I want to look at it. So I'm just going to get out there and run a bit more until I got sick. And then I was forced into silence. I was forced into resting.
Yeah.
And so you kind of go through that dark night of the soul and you have to face it. And it's a great gift. It's not fun, but you can either do it yourself by choice or you can get forced into it. But it's going to happen one way or the other.
Big time. Big time. What sort of energy? I mean, you use the words truth seeker. Particularly, I'm interested in that word seeker. What sort of energy would you associate with that word?
I think in a lot of ways, to be a seeker is I don't know if it's the right word, a mistake, or it's a distraction. Like we go off seeking for something that is already there, really. And that's the paradox of it. So we go and look, in monasteries on the top of Himalayas or, sitting in caves or sitting at the feet of the guru or, going out and pushing, ordinary life to the side. And we look for that thing, but it's right there with us all of the time. And I think eventually, true seekers get to that point of like Rumi talks about it, what you're seeking is seeking you. And it just gets silent, gets still. And that's what the yoga system's teaching you anyway, get still. And then anything you're looking for, the answer's there. But then what are you going to do with it? And that's the thing. That's what you're saying with the psychedelics. I mean, I did tons of plant medicine and I got all the insights and I got enlightened and I dissolved and I became one with God and I got shown exactly everything I need to do. But then doing it was a whole different kettle of fish. And so then you go, oh, no, I just need a little bit more clarity. I'll go and do another ayahuasca session or whatever it might be. But in the end, you've got to be that person. Just do it. Just be the person. And that's really the Tantra, right? Life meeting life.
Yeah. Wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah, and embrace it. Bring it on.
Yeah. Yeah, big time. The reason I asked that question is because I have always had the sense that there is somehow a negative association to seeking. That there's this, and you articulated this beautifully. There's this obsession with searching and looking outside of ourselves. And in my experience, and it sounds like yours as well, I've ticked all the boxes in terms of all the things, all the places I could have looked. I've been there. And I think oftentimes the word seeker or searcher, I remember God bless her, my mother would comment, I grew up as an only child in a single parent household. And my mother would always say to me, you're always searching for something. You're always looking for something. And so I kind of had this sense, oh, is that a bad thing? Is the fact that I'm kind of trying to address this pain that I feel, this angst, is, am I somehow at fault for wanting to figure out a way or find a way of easing that? And I've kind of come full circle on the whole seeker word. I used to kind of, because of that, I kind of pushed it away. But then as I've gotten into midlife, Mark, I've kind of realized that our greatest work, in my opinion, is to know thyself. And how do you do that without looking up and down and around the corner? And I think there's a surrender and there's an acceptance associated, certainly within me that I feel, having done all the plant medicines and gone, climbed the mountains, been the identity that I thought people would be drawn to, sought the external validation that I thought my soul yearned for, only to find that, as you just said, no, it might have a sugar reaction. I might get a hit for a day or a week or a moment, but it doesn't last. And eventually, where I've arrived at is the understanding that, oh yeah, okay, what I'm looking for, this panacea, this salve, this balm for my soul, the only place it's available is on the inside. And the way to get to the inside is to be really uncomfortable and to be in solitude and silence and cultivate things like fucking discipline. I mean, who wants to be, there's part of my body physically reacts to that word. It's like, oh, Jesus, discipline, Can you comment on any of that? Has that been, broadly speaking, your experience too?
Well, as I alluded to, my dad was a strong authoritarian, but what I did learn from him was discipline. I mean, he was an athlete. He was always exercising. He was super disciplined. And I got that gift of discipline. I find that I can be disciplined quite easily. And I know it's difficult for a lot of people, but that's the gift that I got. In the seeking, it's that catch-22. And you can't, like you said, know yourself and be true. It's on the Temple of Delphi that you can't resolve the issue by avoiding it. You have to start seeking. But it's a paradox because when I was seeking, I wasn't fully in my relationships. I wasn't fully involved in that part of life. Because there's something wrong, I got to fix it. So a lot of the seeking was just constantly, there's something wrong with me and I got to fucking fix it. I don't know what it is, but I got to get fixed. And I was driven by that. And I still am to an extent, but not nearly as much as before. But it allowed me to, because it's not like before, it allowed me to have proper relationship. I just didn't really last anything. And now it's been, I have a great partner and it's been over 10 years. And the gift of it is when you do it and you own your own stuff and you can see, your unconscious drivers, then, in relationship, you respond to life instead of reactive to life. So there's a lot of gifts in it. But sometimes you just get caught up and just seek until it all finishes and all you did was seek. And then you didn't integrate what you learned from that seeking into everyday life. And I think that's very important and it needs to happen. And I'm trying to do that more and more these days, trying to just incorporate it moment to moment very practically. And, in the direction that I'm going to in life now, it's really about that in a very concrete way.
Dude, you use one of my favorite words, integrate. How do we integrate? How do we integrate the lessons that we learn along the way?
Well, it needs a lot of courage. I mean, we're basically talking about the shadow aspect of ourselves. The bits, when I talk about the world trained us to be a certain way, whether it's our family or school or culture or religion, whatever, it says you need to be this way. To fit into our paradigm, you need to fit into this way. But inside we go, yeah, but that's not who I am. That's not how I want to be. That's not how I want to interact in the world. And a lot of the systems, the ancient systems, the key word that I use is the return. They're all about a return to who you were before you were trained that way, or a return to source, or return back to your genius. Whatever you want to call it, return back to where you operate, unrestrained, and then show up in the world that way. And it doesn't matter what age. It feels a bit harder when we're older if we've done decades and decades of being somebody else. But we know in ourselves, we know there's that uncomfortable little niggle that this is not it. And there's something else. But it's very important to get back to that. And so there's a lot of different ways from a physical level to more and more subtle ways to get back to that original blueprint of who you are, like how you were actually designed to show up in the world, to serve the world, to actually make a difference in the world.
Always comes back to courage, doesn't it?
It's hard. Yeah, it's scary because, we spend our lifetime not facing those things. And then what we're saying is, let's shine a light on it. And when we shine a light on it, then share it with everyone. Be vulnerable, be honest, and bring it into the light of day. And that means in some way, shape or form, bring it into a relationship, whether it's with a therapist or your family or just online, show up.
It's uncanny to me the number of times I have, and there have been plenty of times when I haven't been courageous, plenty of times, probably more times than I have been courageous. But invariably what I find is that when I cross that threshold, when I do the thing, when I have the conversation, when I show up authentically, when I have the courage to embody a broader, more expansive version of me, and I'm willing to be seen, this freaking podcast took a lot of that from me and still does. The payoff has been incredible. The payoff has been mind-blowing. But despite my lived experience of that and my knowledge of that, it doesn't make the next hard thing any easier to do. And I say that because without wanting to maybe embarrass you, you have accumulated a lot of wisdom over the years. You are a teacher of certainly some note. And it's pretty easy to kind of look at individuals like you and think, well, they got their shit together. This guy probably, levitates. He's probably like one of the ancient yogis, like appearing in two places at the same time and all this sort of stuff. Just despite the wisdom that you hold and teach and share, I'm assuming that you still go through all the doubts and all the introspection and all the rumination. Is that still there? And has its mass sort of decreased in size? If it were a tumorous lump inside you, has it diminished over the years, or does it still need to be addressed?
It still needs to be addressed. And I think it really depends on the season of life that you're going through. So definitely in my situation now in the last 18 months, it's required a different version of myself and a different way to show up. Before COVID, right, it was easy because like what you were talking about, people recognized that, I was the real deal, that I had done the work. I call it the analog age. If you wanted knowledge, you had to go in this, in our era, you had to go to India, go find a guru, sit at their feet, get the practices, and you had to show discipline. If you showed discipline, maybe they'd give you the next part. And it was all kind of orally passed down. And you build that over years and years and years. and you kind of vibrate that, you show up as that, and you've got the knowledge. And so because you had the knowledge, that got your attention. And that attention, visibility, allowed you then to, make an income off that and, help people and do products and do trainings and everything like that. So since that changed over, 2020, and AI came in, we've always had the internet, but AI, essentially information just got democratized. So information just became zero, really. You could get information anywhere. So it flipped. And so now it's an attention economy. So first of all, you have to get attention. If you don't have attention, you're invisible. And you can only then make an income through that visibility. So before it was you had the knowledge that got your attention. Now you've got to get the attention first. Otherwise you just fade away into nothing. And so you become irrelevant. And in my age group, I'm seeing that over and over again as one of the big three pillars, that men feel invisible. They feel like no one notices them, that younger people are rising, because this is what happens when the younger generation, they grow up in a digital space and they understand algorithms and building a personal brand online. They build these audiences, and then it gives the illusion of they're the experts. And so they take over, and we can sit there all day and go, it's not fair and it sucks. It's just how it is. It's just the arena has changed and it's a new game. And if you want to keep moving in your life and have value and do things, you have to learn the new game. Right? You've got to get in the new arena and show up and learn. And because if you can learn it, you end up with an unfair advantage. I can talk about that more later if you like. But, when the internet came along, we didn't go, it's the internet, I'm not going to do that. That's not fair. I just want to work locally. It's no different.
That's the perfect segue, mate. Because I do want to talk about the last 18 months for you, and what led me to reaching out to you. Because it was a post that I saw on social media, on Instagram. And for the people listening and or watching, I want to read part of that post. I'm in my 60s now. I live in another country, and pretty much every way I used to earn money has been taken away. And if I'm honest, it's a little bit freaky. I'm 60 and it feels like I have to reinvent myself, because I was known for my information and my knowledge, but the value of information has gone to zero. If you understand the digital space, then you have an unfair advantage, just what you said, because you can bring that information into this space. And this was the thing that got me. So I'm going to rebuild myself using social media. I'm going to rebuild in public. It's the same me, but the framing of how I take myself into the world is taking another shape. Dude, powerful. Powerful. I think it might have been 2 minutes after watching that I left you a voice memo. I watched that and I thought, I got to speak to this guy. Because what that was, what that is, what I think you offer is so rare. It's so rare. Like I said in the intro, I honestly think that vulnerability and authenticity in a world that is deluged with AI and content, the competitive advantage that anyone can have, in my opinion, certainly this is how I'm seeing the world as I look to promote this podcast and connect with people, and I've got some other creative projects that I'm working on. That's the vehicle for me. My competitive edge is how authentically I show up. And you used a great word before, frequency. It's a felt, to my way of thinking at least, it's a felt sense, less performative and more intuitive. Can you describe the circumstances in your life that have brought on maybe even necessitated this reinvention?
Well, obviously there's the AI and COVID, where everyone went online, and then the democratization of information, because I had a lot of information, and in my head, I'm thinking, cool. In my industry, I'm sweet because as I get older, I'm just going to get more and more guru status. Like, I'm sweet. And then this happened. Shit. I'm back at the drawing board. I'm back at the bottom of the heap with this new way of doing things. And so then I thought, okay, well, I started studying it. I've always thought, okay, AI. I studied the AI right from the beginning. I'm quite proficient in it. And then I looked at, okay, well, all the people in my generation, I call it, we had the guru age, the analog age, where you had to go and learn it, and it was all analog. So it was learned through initiation, by apprenticing, by deep experience, by sitting in there. You had to earn that knowledge. And so now I'm saying, okay, don't feel like that's a waste now. Learn how to bridge that into the digital space. And what I mean by that is, in the digital space, a lot of people still think social media and they just kind of go, oh, it's just that thing we just connect with people. But no, it's an incredible opportunity to serve people at the highest level on a global level. And what you're learning to do is to build a personal brand, because people buy people. They don't buy corporations. That's why corporations are actually paying some of the biggest influencers, the people that have the people watching them, a lot of money to promote their thing, because people buy people. And so the whole thing is, it's all about bringing your story in, plus the frameworks that you use in the social media, if you combine those two things. But your story, what you guys, it's saying my generation, I'm watching that, for you guys, your story is super powerful. And what's different to the younger generation is you've got lived experience, you've got embodiment. And if you can take that and level the playing field in this new arena of, digital building a brand, you've got an unfair advantage, because, these younger crew that are rising above, when people buy their products, a lot of the time they're just creating them in Canva, and they're doing AI stuff, and they're getting AI scripts and AI sequences and whatever they are, and people pay for it and they think, oh, that's just fluff. It's not everyone, but it's a lot of times the case. But good luck to them. That's just how it is. Great. They can take the advantage of it. They can make a bit of coin. Fantastic. But you guys, if you can level that playing field and bring that in, people can feel the difference. They're looking for authenticity. They're looking for real. They're looking for people that can solve the problem. The other thing you have to tweak is you're not just sharing information. You're sharing what people want. Is they want outcomes. Tell me what to do. I don't need the information. I can go search that on YouTube. Tell me what to do. And so you just draw from your life the things that you did, the things that were taught to you, the tools that you've gathered, the hard knocks that you went through and what you learned from that. And when you can share that online authentically, vulnerably, you can tell your story, it's super, super powerful. And we're positioned really, really well if you're willing to go through, embracing the cringe and go through the clunkiness of learning that new arena. But you've done it. Everyone's done it their whole life, learning new skills and implementing. And sometimes I hear this, oh yeah, but I'm too old. You can't teach, old dog new tricks. And that's for the younger generation. Bullshit, right? No, that's only if you accept it. I'm not willing to accept it. Big thing what I talk about is refusing to fade, right? Refuse to fade. Get older, get better, right? You've got so much to offer. Get out there and make a difference. And you can you can get your value back, you can get your visibility back, and you can serve at a really high level, like into any age, and provide really good value.
Yeah. Just to add to that too, I think I agree with everything you've said, but you've also got lived experience, but you also have a better sense of who you are, who you really are, relative to different versions that you've been and different identities and the different suits as a human that you've worn. So, being able to direct that life force and energy through a more authentic, real lens in middle age, I think is a real asset. So how's the response been? So, I mean, that post, like I said to you, it grabbed me because it was raw and it was honest and it was vulnerable. And I think at the end of it, you said, "Hey, I'm scared, but I'm excited." And I just thought, "Oh my God, I love people like this. I want to be around them." What is the response? I mean, outside of being invited to talk on podcasts, what is the response been by your community?
Well, the more vulnerable that I show up, more authentic, the more engaging it is, the more people talk to that level. What I've learned, I've been studying content creation and building brands, and I've just finished a fantastic course, content creators. If anyone looks that up, but it's very, very good. And so what happened was, so I think what you'll see in the next 6 months is a real jump in my audience, because one of the things for me has taken a lot of courage, and it's the biggest, scariest thing, is I'm letting go of Yoga Mark, the identity of Yoga Mark. And so my audience online has always followed Yoga Mark, and it's 80% women. That's just by default in the yoga space. But at some point in COVID, I was business marked because I could see all the yoga teachers struggling. So I started teaching business stuff. And then the yoga audience was like, "Who's this guy? Where's the yoga?" So I lost part of my audience, but I was trying to help them. I just didn't understand. And so now I'm transitioning to men, over 45 to 65. So the algorithm's completely confused. It doesn't know how to push me out. So I'm doing a hard cut. I just finished this course. Starting next week, I'm doing a hard cut, and I'm just talking to men 45 to 65. So what will happen is, some of the women will fall out, but some of them will recognize it's applicable to them, and it's applicable to their partners and, husbands, whatever it might be. And then when I clear that out and the message clears and more men come into it, and then the algorithm's clear, it's going to build. But again, these are things that you have to learn as part of it. But I just feel, because in the yoga space, I've done it my whole life, and everything that I will teach to men will be the yoga umbrella, but I'll just take the Sanskrit out and take the yoga references. But it's exactly the same. But the yoga space has just been so commoditized and so commercialized and watered down. I just don't feel aligned. It feels like that time is done. And so now to go into this season of life where I have felt invisible, I have felt lost, I have felt, who am I now? Where do I fit into this? How do I make an income? How do I support myself into the future? What do I need to do? And I started having conversations with guys, and it shocked me because so many of them have got different variations of that. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to do that. I'm going to help guys through what I'm going through because it's resonant. It's what wakes me up, and I feel more alive when I talk about it. It wakes me up. And so, but I'm completely letting go of my identity and shifting into something else. And that's where I pat myself on the back the biggest way for the courage. And I have 100%. Like, it'll work. I just got to put in the work and the time, and it's going to shift over.
It will work. And you know why I think it'll work? Just the fact that you have studied content creation. The willingness, that's what I really, we don't know each other very well. We've had a couple of conversations, but one thing that really stands out to me about you is there's this willingness to learn and this curiosity. What was your relationship like with social media prior to this reinvention?
I mean, I was always doing it, and my partner, to be honest, would drive a lot of it. And I never really understood how it worked. Didn't really understood if you post this and it gets a bunch of engagement, and then you post this and it gets none. Why? I don't understand. Why is that working? And for example, like the post that I've been doing recently about men's stuff hasn't got a lot of views because it's largely women's audience and they're expecting yoga. But then I posted one, a trending one about my relationship and my dogs, and that got the highest by far. And it's saying, well, yeah, because your audience is women and they love that when you talk about your relationship. It's like, oh, so I'm really starting to understand it. And I think there was something like 600 people in the training that I did, and I was the oldest, definitely, one of a handful of the oldest, if I wasn't. But I loved being in the energy of the different cohorts and sharing the journeys together, because in the end, we're all the same. We're all trying our best. We're all going through and trying to build a life and build a business and do our best and, overcome all of our challenges. But certainly across the board, when people share their truth and their life, and they're authentic and vulnerable. Some of them went really viral because in their audience was very clear. The algorithm was very clear, and some of them went very viral because of just sharing, authenticity stuff. So I could see the potential of what was there once I understand the game and how it works properly, which I've got such a bigger grasp on that now. The potential of what can happen.
Yeah. How do you reconcile, and we kind of touched on this in the briefing call that we had a little while ago. I sometimes struggle to reconcile my desire to help this podcast find an audience. Because, of course, that's what everyone's measuring. They're measuring views and downloads and followers, and I've been very cautious of wanting to play that game. In fact, I haven't played the game. And instead, I have reconciled myself with this kind of internal mantra that I just say to myself every time I feel that energy coming up inside of me of wanting this thing to be something bigger than what it currently is. I just say to myself, it's going to find its audience. Focus on the work, focus on authentic conversations, and focus on serving others, and it will find its audience. The only variable is time. And I've struggled with the push-pull of wanting to help it find its audience versus this knowing sort of intuitive felt sense that, okay, I'm just going to do this and keep doing it. How do you, particularly with your background and your knowledge, how do you reconcile this competitive arena that you're in now to, get eyeballs, get likes and views? I mean, what stimulated this question, Mark, was a little earlier you said, in describing where you currently are, you said, now, I've got all this wisdom, but I'm kind of at the bottom of the heap. And I kind of went, what heap? Like spiritually, there is no heap. It's all an illusion. How do you reconcile that?
Well, I think I agree with what you're saying, but I'd also say then you don't worry about the numbers so much, but worry about the data. That's what you want to be looking at. What is the data? What are people responding to? What are the messages? What are the comments? Because then that's going to shape it in the right direction for your audience. Yeah. So, I mean, if we got a viral post, I wouldn't worry so much about the numbers, but I'd be looking at, what was it they were paying attention to? What were the comments? What were they engaging with there? And then I'd double down on that. What was the framing? What was the hook? What were the elements of it that worked? And double down on those things. So, and I think the difference for most of us as older creators, or I talk about, dominating your second act. Yeah, because a lot of you that I'm speaking to, you've been successful, you've done well, you may even be financially well off. But I tell you what, I've seen a bunch of people, because where I live, guys retire, but if they've got nothing driving them, if they're not contributing, if they don't feel like they're of value, they just start sliding this slow drift into comfort. It's a very slippery slope. So I always encourage, just be careful of that and start operating at another level, because that slide happens with their health, with their energy, their vitality, mindsets. And it can happen very quickly. And so I think also with something like social media, when you're older, you give less fucks. Part of it is that you get negative comments. The more you stand out, the more you put yourself out there, you'll get a lot of love, but you'll also get people that troll and do those things. But for me, with all the spiritual practice, I think I'm able to respond to life rather than react to it. So if I see something, I get very little of it, but when I see it, I just go, thanks for your opinion, have a nice day, right? Next, right? Yep, thanks for your opinion, all the best, next. I don't even pay any attention to it whatsoever. Whereas if I was younger, I'd probably dwell on it. It's like, whatever, yeah, go on, because it doesn't impact me, because I'm here for something else. And I think that is very useful and helpful, because you've lived a life and you've done amazing things and you've raised kids and and we fuck up and we make mistakes, embrace them as well. Show up with those things. What did you learn? What were the tools? Because you can start mentoring the people behind you. You can start serving them. You can teach them how not to go into the same pitfalls, right? How not to repeat the mistakes that you did. That's incredibly valuable. Don't underestimate, using those things to help the generations following behind you.
Yeah. This new arena that you've entered, that I'm in as well, it's very crowded. It's very crowded, I've noticed. I had a quick look at my phone this morning, and I noted down the following post that I saw. I saw 7 ways to get a better night's sleep. I saw 5 ways to improve your relationship, and I saw 10 ways to recover from heartache. Everyone is offering advice. Everyone is competing in this new, as you call it, the attention economy. How do we navigate that world? How do we know who to listen to? And what role do you think discernment plays in this?
Well, in the end, discernment plays every role in it. You have to start looking at, okay, here's the words of the person. This is what they're selling, this is what they're espousing, but are they showing up like that? Are they actually that person? Over time, when you look at their content, and that's why, it's crowded, but there's only one you. And that's the whole point of shaping everything that you're teaching to your story. So it's like you have a vision that you want to create. Yeah, I want to help men at 45 to 65 who refuse to fade, and want to dominate their second act, right? And then you want to start bringing in, what are the skills that you offer? What are your mindsets that are unique to everybody else? How does your lifestyle actually mirror that? What are your passions? For me, it's surfing. They'll see me surfing, and I say, I'm 60, but I'm getting better. I'm going to keep getting better than what I was when I was 20. But what happens is, and then I say, look, you can all get better, but my mindset is, you just need to be more nuanced and more refined in what you do. Yeah, it's different, because you'll see, for example, the guys online that will go, you just need peptides, just stick this needle in your ass and you'll be ripped. you'll be ripped and you'll get a hot 25-year-old. And I can see the temptation to that, but by putting a needle in you and speeding up a growth hormone is not going to fix any underlying flaws. And what I'm saying is get back to foundations first, like purify your system, strengthen your system, get a certain a level of stability in your mind, regulate your nervous system, learn to get your vehicle running really well, and then start to build vitality and power on top of that. And then if you feel like you want to add those things in, do it. Now, I'm not against them. If you use something to speed up an injury, great, or remove some inflammation, great. I'm talking about growth stuff. When guys get freaked out when their testosterone drops and things like that. So again, that just circles around. Talk to your experience. Oh, when I was in my 50s to 60s, you lose 1% of testosterone, they say after 30, every year. And then you don't notice it. And then I saw myself running along the beach, and it was like Pamela Anderson slow motion. I was just getting this wobble, bouncing up and down. I'm like, oh my God, right? So the temptation is, well, I just take testosterone. No, clean your system up, get the inflammation out, eat natural foods that support that. Just get more nuanced and refined, and do some resistance training. And you can change all of that. Yeah. It's just and they call it a hack. It's a hack, right? Right? I'm not judging anyone. I understand the temptation, but we were designed to age a lot longer than we do. It's just poor habits over decades. Doing the peptides isn't going to change that, or doing testosterone just isn't going to change that. Get all of that right. And then if you want to, support it with those things. I don't know if I went off track there. I can't remember what the question was.
No. It's actually, again, you've kind of set me up for the next question, because it was in association to this period that we both find ourselves in midlife. I want to talk about our stage of life. I'm not that much younger than you. It's such a critical stage, I think. It can be beautiful and terrifying at the same time. I've always balked at, I might be doing something off-piste. I might be searching, quote unquote searching, or doing something that is interesting to someone else. And I'll hear the term, oh my God, he's having a midlife crisis. You know what I mean? And as part of me, I kind of think, I kind of, grind my teeth, because I want to say, of course I freaking am. Of course I freaking am. As human beings, we should be evolving constantly. And when one of us actually goes through an evolutionary spurt, if you will, it's so that is so arresting to everybody else that they have to, they have to feel better about that by kind of seeing that as a negative, a midlife crisis. I've always thought that, bring them on, man. Bring on the next crisis, because with every crisis, to your point, I'm getting a bit better. I'm getting to know myself better. I'm showing up more authentically. I have more courage. But it's a really critical period of our lives, this midlife period. And a lot of us, as you mentioned earlier, a lot of particularly men can slide into irrelevance. They've probably got a few bucks in their pockets. They probably don't need to work as hard as they used to. They probably don't need to care as much about their health as they used to. What do you think separates those of us that reach this point of our lives and then recede from those of us that reach a similar point and, really give ourselves to this second season?
I think it's a natural growth mindset. I think the willingness not to fade into invisibility, that you're willing to take accountability and be responsible, that you're disciplined, because it means dropping a lot of bad habits for most people and then shifting things up and bringing yourself back into alignment, on all the different levels. And I think the biggest part of that is a mindset shift that I've still got more to give, and I'm not ready to opt out now, and I'm certainly not, and I know you're not. But you've got to have that mindset, because if we talk about midlife crisis, the average age for men is 78, 79, so that's 40. And so, but I hear friends of mine talk about, my husband's having a midlife crisis. He's, buying this, he's doing that, he's et cetera, or having an affair, midlife crisis. So 60, I don't know what you call that. It's a 3/4 crisis, but
2/3.
The 2/3 crisis. And I think it's really exciting, in a sense, the possibilities. And obviously one of the biggest studies is the blue zone longevity studies. And so you would see a lot of those people that had longevity, they weren't smashing it up in the gym, they weren't pumping peptides, they were squatting, they were sitting down, they were getting up, they're walking upstairs, they're in the fields, they're walking, they're doing stuff. They're eating a moderate food. They feel like they've got value. The community sees their wisdom. They acknowledges their wisdom. Our culture doesn't do that, so you've got to make it be known. They have good friends. They've got social networks. Their nervous systems aren't stressed out all the time. They're not pumping cortisol. They're not on their phones all the time. There's pointing to a lot of great things there that we seems further and further away than what it was a couple of generations ago. And I think for me, when I talk about being more nuanced and refined, it's coming back to a lot of those things as well. And if we're not in the fields and we're doing this and that, go to the gym. I like going to the gym. Resistance is very important when you're getting older as well. For example, those things, but get out and move. Get out and exercise. Eat the right things. Don't isolate yourself. One of the biggest things that came up over and over again in my research, the number one thing actually for men, is shame. They feel embarrassed and they feel shameful that I thought my life would be different to this. I thought I would be further along from this. I thought I would be more financially secure. I thought my relationship would be amazing forever. And and I don't want to be a burden on anybody, right? This whole thing. And so men hold it all inside and they don't communicate these things. And suicides are super high in that age bracket, and depression is big time. And I've helped a number of guys come out of that black hole and just see the value that they bring to the table and step up into that. And just feeling that value again, and actually exercising and doing things and being disciplined every day in their practices, they start to wake up again, right, and feel proud about themselves. And that's part of it. And we see these men's movements. The men's wellness space is growing a lot, and the men's kind of personal development space is because they're understanding there's more willingness to open into it. There's a number of different spaces there, and I think I do it a bit differently. But like all of that sort of stuff, you've got to dust off and get your pride back. Start feeling good about yourself, and that's not going to happen by just sitting around ruminating that you're invisible, no one sees you anymore, and younger people are getting the jobs that you should have. And I mean, it's going to happen more and more. Listen, everyone, it's going to happen more and more. Get ready for it. because AI is just going to take way more jobs. And if you're in the older section, you're the first to go. Don't think it's not going to happen to you. A lot of guys think if they're 55, I've got another 10, 12 years in the work. I've been in this company all the time. I'm sweet, just like I thought I was sweet. No, there's going to be a lot of rude awakenings. So start the process now so it's not so,
confronting. Yeah, big time. I want to talk about the importance of teachers, because we live in a very much a digital world, and there are so many coaches. The word coach seems to have entered our lexicon in a bigger way than it used to exist. When you said coach to me, it was my soccer coach. Now there's a coach, there's a men's coach, there's a relationship coach, there's a mind coach, there's a personal trainer that helps you in the gym. You've got all these coaches, right, that are helping us with different aspects of our lives, which is fine. I've used some of these people, right? So I see tremendous value in some of these offerings, but I do sometimes struggle with that word when I juxtapose and compare that to the word teacher. Teacher for me, for whatever reason, seems to have more of a resonance to it. There's more of a I don't know. There's, and I'm probably wrong on this, and not to disparage anyone that's a coach, because I'm sure you've put a lot of hard work into acquiring the skills and attributes that you've got. But for whatever reason, the word teacher sits in my head as something that you used the word earlier, earned. It's been earned. Who have been some of your teachers over the years, and what characteristics have they exhibited to you that have inclined you to want to choose to work with them?
I think the first one that stands out is like Dr. Julie Henderson when I was doing my somatic psychotherapy training. And she has a PhD in somatics, body orientated therapy. And sometimes it's the simplest things that other people might go, well, of course, but it hits you like a ton of bricks. And she said to me, because I'm in that phase of struggling and feeling empty and lost, I'm in the journey of shedding it all. But she said, no, well-being is your ordinary state. I'm like, what? I said, doesn't feel ordinary to me. And she said, yeah, you just have to remove what's in the way, and what's already there will come to the surface. And I've always taken that on and seen that as the system of yoga. Like, you're not adding anything, you're subtracting. You're removing the tensions, you're removing the immobilization, the contractions, you're removing the distortions in the breathing patterns, you're removing the negative beliefs, you're removing the emotions that don't serve you. And when you remove all of that, who you are just arises to the surface. And the Tibetan Buddhists say that your natural state is love, joy, compassion, equanimity. That's the vibration of a human being when you get all the bullshit out of the way. And it's your natural state. So that was the first thing. And I just took that on into everything that I did. And then Empo Rinpoche, he was the 11th reincarnation of that particular mind stream. Incredibly powerful guy, but just showed up in a very ordinary way. And he would call me Gangadhar. This was a name I had from an Aboriginal elder. I mean, crocodile, he'd call me Gungi. And he'd say, mate, you can develop all the power in the world, but just show up ordinary, moment to moment in life, right? And someone, wants to put you on the pedestal, just kick it away, right? Just show up and be the, be the sounding board, right? And don't take credit for it. They do the work. And so that place of seeing him, and we had even though it was at this very high level, we had a very mate relationship. we'd sit up in his monastery up in the Himalayas and watch Bollywood movies and talk about our favorite Bollywood. And we'd play cricket on the monastery roof. And I'm telling you, proper cricket. I mean, on an uneven concrete surface with guys, monks pelting down fastballs, and all the monks with full face helmets, arm pads, leg pads, like crazy. And so, and a lot of people thought that Emperor Rinpoche wasn't really serious, and even his teachers. But then one day, out of the blue, without telling anyone, he went into silence, didn't tell anyone. It's been, I'm going to guess, between 5 and 6 years now. He hasn't come out. So they're just different people, right? They're operating at a different level. And he also taught me about indirect teaching. He, rather than just tell you the answer, he would create a circumstance where you would come to the answer yourself. And I've always done that. And I think one thing that's about coaching is you're not paid to fix someone, you're paid to ask really good questions so that it folds someone into themselves so they come up with the answer themselves. And when they come up with the answer themselves, they feel very empowered. And I remember the first time I really noticed it, I went up to the monastery. We were one of the first Westerners to go up there with another lady. And they picked me up at the airport in Delhi. And it's probably like a 6-hour drive up to the north. And then, it's like 2,200 meters up. And he's there with a senior monk in the front seat, four-wheel drive. And this is one of the early days. And we're in the car. And I'm super nervous because he's an authority figure, and authority was scary to me, like my father. And I didn't want to say the wrong thing, and I was quiet, and I wanted to talk, but I didn't know what to say. That had been my whole life. And the next minute, puts in a cassette into the car, and it's Akadaka. And the lady, it's like, it's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll. And the monk doesn't speak English, the old monk, and he's kind of backing away. And then I say to the lady, that's Akadaka. Yeah. And then we get to the monastery, and I say to Rinpoche, I didn't know you liked AC/DC. He goes, yeah, don't really. And what I realized was he was just putting it on, just saying, hey, dude, just chill out, be ordinary. Like, you're at home, you're amongst friends, just relax. And so that started that relationship where I'd get lots of teachings like that, but he'd never tell me directly. And I'd go, oh, sometimes I pick it up quicker, and other times it's like, sneaky bugger, got me again. And I really like that way of learning. I try to mimic it myself as best I can. And then my main guru, Gurudev Jungli Das Maharaj, he's in his hundreds. No one knows. He doesn't have a birth certificate. No one really knows how old he is. But for me, he was that full representation of yoga. He just vibrated, merging his individual self with the universal. It felt very impersonal in a way, but it's the most personal thing in the world. He wasn't there as an individual, but the vibration of when he would look at you was like love pouring through his eyes, and I just represented it. And he was such a beautiful being, but creating schools, building hospitals, feeding thousands of people, didn't even look like he was trying, because it was coming from his soul. And when I work with men, it's what I call that the third way of power, quiet power, looking at these guys and women that mastered the human system, and what I learned from that, and then how to take that into your kind of, your male journeys, rather than, like someone like Andrew Tate, who's that kind of strong alpha masculinity, but goes into battle. I respect anyone that has an opinion, stakes a flag, and is willing to fight for it. So I really like him from that. I don't agree with everything he says, but I like that. But the point is, he wants to go into battle, so it's a fight all the time. And then you've got the other guys that are, billionaires or hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're not relating to people. They just say, start a business, pick yourself up, get going. And so I talk about this third way of power, which is this quiet power that I learn off the masters and how to do that. So, and a number of other people that I've learned different things, but I guess that they would be my main influences.
One of the drugs that I have struggled with in my life has been the drug of external validation. And that came to mind just then because you made reference to your guru or one of your teachers suggesting to you that if validation shows up, that you should kick the stool away. How have you managed your relationship with that? Because clearly, as a teacher that has something substantive to offer people, and people are drawn to you, it must be tempting to kind of warm your hands by the fireside of validation. How have you managed that? How have you managed to maintain boundaries along your journey?
I think it's a double-edged sword. I think at one level I could say I had humility, and I did. But underlying that was also that pattern that I grew up with of flying under the radar that I got taught. Right? Don't put your head up, don't shine, don't question, don't overshadow me. And so I learned there was punishment if I did that. So I learned to fly under the radar. So it's hard to distinguish what was playing out some of the times between just flying under the radar and having the humility, knowing that I didn't fix you. I shared some tools with you, but you took them on board and you actually did the work. Well done. Well done. That's amazing. That's all on you. And so there's definitely that part of it. I do know that in the space, I was always true to myself, that yoga was a system to create better human beings. And that more and more as it got commercialized and into a physical product, that I could have made more money, I could have had a bigger reach, certainly more money, if I focused on the physical aspect of it, like doing fancy pants poses and stuff like that. But that wasn't authentic to me. It wasn't real. So I think in a lot of ways, and people recognized that, and I was respected, but it made my audience smaller. And now, recognizing that flying under the radar doesn't serve. It did at a time. It kept me safe. It protected me. But now, it's time that I got to shine, that I've got to show my brilliance. I've got to own all of everything that I've done, because it is quite extraordinary. If I write it out, my CV, compared to what's out there and what I bring to the table as a pet, there's not many that compare with it in my field and what I've done across so many different fields. And it's time to really own that and put it out there. So that's the other side of it. But still maintain that humility of whatever I'm doing. Yeah, you did it. You put it in place and you did it. Sure, I gave you the tools, but I learned those tools off my teachers, right? And they learned it off their teachers. We're just passing on, and I want you to pass it on to the people behind you. So we just keep the lineage going, because to me, lineage was always very, very important, rather than just do a random teacher training, which is mainly just focused on the physical part, and then, go out and teach a sequence. Because the lineage, there's a lot of depth and power that's passed down through those.
I got to tell you, I resonated with you when you spoke about playing small, not being seen, not being heard. And it just occurred to me as you were saying that, I suspect that you and I grew up in an era, certainly in Australia, where we had this thing called tall poppy syndrome. So anyone that did stand out that did have the temerity to display their feathers was, immediately cut down. And I remember being a kid and, being accused of being a show off. Don't show off. Remember that? Don't show off, you poser. These terms like poser and show off, that gets, behead. Yeah, big time, right? And that gets into our systems and it sluices around our systems for decades to the point where you find yourself at 50 or 60 thinking, I don't want to show myself. I'm too scared to show myself because that pattern was laid down when I was 5 years old. So it's interesting hearing you say that because, a big part of doing this podcast for me, and I suspect a big part of doing what you're doing now is finding the courage to occupy more space.
Yeah. And success comes from having a very clear vision, right? Who is it that you want to serve? What do you want to work with? And then being very disciplined with understanding and communicating to that audience all the time through your journey. So that's part of it. Hey, it's time to step up. You're 50, you're 60, who fucking cares, right? Right? When I was a kid, yeah, Dad'd whack me. Mum had her bamboo stick behind the sink that we all know, and we get that across the legs. That was the generation. That happened to them as well. I'm not saying my dad's a bad guy. Like, that sucks. I don't agree with that at all. And I wouldn't do it to kids. But that was just the generation, and they had it done to them, and they had it done to them. And, you go to school. I went to a private boys' school, and you've got these brothers that are supposed to be spiritual men, and they're hitting you with these thick rubber straps, right? Whack. They don't be an individual. Don't speak out. Don't question. Don't be cheeky. Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do this. Otherwise, whack, whack, whack. And if you keep pushing back, get out. And it was the same in the church. I was at like fifth class, sixth class, before I went to the big school, and we had the Catholic school on top and the church underneath. We had to do in confession every week. Like, as kids, we had to go every week. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It's 1 week since my confession, and you just have to make up sins. I had to make up sins. Okay, to do two Our Fathers and three Hail Marys and blah, blah, blah. And then you go to church, and there's these grumpy, they weren't all, but a number of them were grumpy old men that had no spirit. Then I just sit down, kneel up, stand, sit, kneel, stand, sit, kneel. I'd dress in my school clothes. And I'm like, what are we doing here? What am I doing here? Whack! I just turn up. And so this whole, and then your boss, you get to your boss and you can't say anything again. Over and over and over again. That just toe the line, right? Fit into the narrative. So now we get the opportunity to step outside of the narrative. There's also social censorship in social media, but that's sort of getting into question a lot more. But depends on your topic. But you can control the narrative. You can be the narrative, whatever you want to do. And of course, yeah, you'll get a bit of that stuff where they want to tow you down. But hey, who cares, right? Yeah, thanks for your opinion. Have a good day. So I think, yeah, there's that opportunity you have to shift it. If you want to be able to be successful in this second act, in this particular arena, let it go. Let it go. Be around people that are cheering you on, be in communities that are cheering you on. Have a mentor, have a coach, have a teacher, whichever one fits best with you. And but look at that they're actually authentic, that they walk the talk, and go for it, because you've got such a fantastic opportunity. And we all went through that in that generation because it was something that we needed to learn. Because once you lose it, you go on the journey back to it, and in that journey, they talk about that. you've got to walk through the dark forest. If you're following someone else's path, you're on the wrong path. You can have gurus and teachers as guides, but you've got to beat your own path. And, as you go through there, you break bones and you get bruised and you get knocked up. And on the other side of it, you've got this tool bag of kits of all the lessons you've learned and super value. Then you go back into the village and you share it. And that's really where we're at, and there's a lot of gold in that.
Yeah. I always talk, it's funny you should say those words. I always talk about share, coming back from the other side, because in the olden days, someone would go over the mountain, perhaps for the first time, and come back and tell the villagers where the food was and where not to go. And in many ways, this podcast is really a representation of that. Mark, we're coming up on the end of the conversation. I've got a couple more questions for you. You mentioned a vision. You've got it's important to have a solid vision. You've got a solid vision for this second season of your life. What does that vision look like? What is this new version of what you offer going to look like?
Working with men 45 to 65 who refuse to fade, that they've got more to offer. And I'm basically, I'm running, whatever the term is, coaching programs for that, like 8 to 12 weeks. And I'm shaping all of that, both online and face-to-face. And, I have a lot of content. So I'm reshaping a lot of the content to that audience. And I'll give a lot of that away for free because I just want to serve. But for those that really want to step it up and make that difference, I'm going to, do that thing. And I was just thinking, I just had this water bottle and I read it. This is from Gandhi, but I don't know if you can read it, but it's just exactly what we're talking about.
Oh, wow. Learn as if you will live forever.
And then live like you will die tomorrow.
Oh, okay. Live like you'll die tomorrow. I love that.
Learn as if you will live forever and live like you will die tomorrow. Gandhi.
Powerful. Mate, last question. I read somewhere that you said, it was in one of your posts, life doesn't play fair. It's always teaching you if you listen. What do you think life's teaching you now?
To shine. Yeah, to actually fly above the radar. Stop flying below the radar. Start shining. Start owning what you have. Stop sitting on the outskirts. Get right in there. Show yourself authentically. Be real. Tell it as it is. Really, and serve the guys that are going through that same season. That's where you're going to be of most benefit right now. I'm not going to be at most benefit running teacher trainings. I'll be a much more benefit serving that audience because it's needed, but also because otherwise we get all of this wisdom and knowledge, this lived wisdom and knowledge, getting left behind, sitting on the sidelines, because they don't know how to put it into this current arena, and that would be such a shame. It needs to be there. Like, people really need it. It's super valuable. And I'll help you. Part of it, what we do is we help you learn the game as well.
Mate, how do people get in touch with you?
My site is yogacoach.com. And then I'm mostly on Instagram. It's mark.breadner. And if you're on Instagram and you're one of the audience I'm talking to, I'm just shaping it now, but a lot of the content from Monday onwards actually is going to be very specific to the audience that I've been talking about.
Wonderful. Dude, I've got to tell you, thank you for making the time for this conversation. I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed getting to know you because you are the living, walking embodiment of why I started this podcast, because I found myself in a very similar situation. You know, corporate guy gets jettisoned out of the corporate world with lots of questions about himself. Who am I? What's my identity? What has value? What do I bring to the world? And one of the things that came up for me in that period of stillness and silence and not knowing and fear was, I want to talk about this. And I want to find people that have gone through adversity or going through a similar challenge that are willing to talk about it, because I think that willingness is vital for all of us. That willingness is leadership. It's leadership. So, mate, thank you for all of your courage and your willingness to feel fear, because I know this doesn't come without fear as well. And thank you for the example that you've been, certainly to me and the people that will listen to this conversation.
Awesome. Thanks for the invite. I really enjoyed the conversation as well. And I like to finish with that mantra, get older, get better. Let's keep getting better.
What a great way to end it. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Pleasure.